I'm Paul Zigo. This is Cinema for Cynics, and I may not have talked about it on this channel before, but I have kind of a hard time getting into TV shows. And my friend TJ is constantly badgering me about Rick and Morty. Constant fucking just as soon as I get up in the fucking morning, hey, you watch Rick and Morty? Rick and Morty, wubba lubba dub dub, Rick and Morty. Hey man, the memes are dank on Rick and Morty. And he finally wore me down by saying he would pick 5 episodes for me to watch, and if I watched those, he'd leave me alone. So I'm here today to get TJ to fucking leave me alone about Rick and Morty by watching his 5 episodes.
That's a gross exaggeration.
Whatever. Don't lie to the people, TJ.
All right.
So let's take a look at these episodes. The first one I watched was Season 1, Episode 2, Lawnmower Dog. It was technically the first episode of Rick and Morty I've ever watched from start to finish. And it was clearly a play on Inception. And I think I kind of got what Rick and Morty was going to do in this first episode. It's take these kind of well-defined sci-fi and horror tropes and then explore them to the point of ridiculousness. So in this episode, Rick has a scheme to go into somebody's dreams and plant the idea that Morty deserves A's in math. And it leads to them going ever deeper. It explores some things that Inception doesn't. So in Inception, you can go deeper into a person's dream by incepting them in the dream world. Well, this episode kind of explores what would happen if you incepted a character in that dream world. So they go incredibly deep, and I liked the episode. I chuckled a few times at it. I think it was a good one to start with, and I kind of expected that it was going to continue in that vein, and it does. The second episode that I watched was Season 1, Episode 4, M. Night Shyamalan's. This one is clearly about the Matrix, I guess. It's taking that Matrix idea. But something that happened in this one kind of set a tone for the later ones for me as well. The side content is oftentimes way more interesting than what Rick and Morty get up to, at least in my opinion, especially in this episode. Jerry, who's, I guess, Morty's dad, also gets sucked into this simulation world with Rick and Morty, but he's in a different area of it, and the aliens running the simulation need more power to run the one that Rick and Morty are in. So he's in this low power, low priority simulation, and he has the best day of his life. And I thought that was hilarious. Like, he's going through this glitchy matrix, and everything seems to work out for him because it doesn't have the processing power to actually tell him his ideas suck. All it can do is reply yes to him, and he has the absolute greatest day of his life, and then at the end is crushed when he finds out it's just a simulation. To me, that's better than anything that Rick and Morty pull off in the episode. The next one I watched was Season 1, Episode 6, Rick Potion number 9. And this one, probably my least favorite of the episodes that I watched, if I'm honest. And it's not a bad episode. It's the kind of David Cronenberg episode, homage to The Fly and Videodrome. These kind of Rick tries to give Morty this potion that's gonna make this girl that he likes fall in love with him, using different animals. So like I think the one that he used was like a vole because they mate for life. He said, I extracted this from the brain of a vole because they mate for life. Of course, it goes horribly wrong. It ends in everybody falling in love with Morty. And Rick's answer to this is to make even more potions using more parts of animals. And it ends pretty much with all of humanity turned into these giant blob monster Cronenberg things. It's a fun episode, but I didn't really like the side content as much. There's a little bit with Morty's family trying to navigate the world, but it wasn't really explored very in depth. The ending was cool. I like how Rick just uses the old multiverse MacGuffin and goes, hey, I found a multiverse where all this shit happened, but I won, and we died right after. So let's dispose of our own bodies. So ending was cool. The next one I watched was Season 2, Episode 4, Total Recall. And this one was my favorite of the episodes that I watched by far. It's kind of like I think an homage to The Thing, this idea that you can't trust that the people around you are real. It's a pretty well-worn sci-fi and horror trope, even outside of The Thing. But I loved all the little side characters, Mr. Poopy Butthole and Pencil Vester, and just like as the show goes on, more and more of these crazy, wacky breakout characters appear until the entire house is implausibly filled with all these figments of everybody's imagination. It's just a great episode. I had fun with it all the way through. Loved the little twist ending where Mr. Poopy Butthole turns out to be a real person after all. The last one I watched, season 2, episode 6, the Ricks Must Be Crazy. This is the one where Rick invents a miniature universe to run his car battery, and he's got the people in the little universe stomping on things to make power for him. And of course, in what I've learned is true Rick and Morty fashion, they take that concept, which probably could have been an episode of any other show on its own, and they go incredibly off the wall deep with it. They're like, well, what if those people in that little mini universe come up with the ability to make their own little mini universe, and they start doing the same shit? And that's what happens. It happens, in fact, I think 3 times over. One of the little mini universes creates the ability to create its own mini universe. And so it's basically an examination of that, stretched to its logical limits and beyond. So that's the 5 episodes of Rick and Morty.
Then you want to talk about that car shit?
The car shit.
With the side plot in that episode.
Oh, yeah! The side plot in that episode, that's true. Thank you, TJ, for reminding me. The side plot in that episode is actually, I think, more interesting than the miniverse concept. When they go into the miniverse to see why the car battery isn't working, Rick tells the car that he's driving to protect Summer, who's Morty's sister. And it goes through, like it kills people that try and walk up to the car. Somebody tries to walk up in the car and ask her something, and it just dices him into nothing. And she keeps going, every time we come back to her, she goes a little farther trying to make rules for the car. Like, you can protect me, but you can't kill anybody. And it goes through all these ridiculous ways. It was actually more interesting to me than the whole miniverse concept. I would have watched a whole episode of Summer getting protected by the car in various ways. But I guess that kind of wraps it up. Those are the 5 episodes that I watched. What seems to typify Rick and Morty to me is this idea that Rick and Morty go on some adventure that has some consequence in some sub-character's life, and the episode is kind of split between the time you spend with Rick and Morty and the time you spend with the people dealing with the fallout of their stupid, experiment or whatever it is that they've done. And this idea of taking tropes from horror and sci-fi and just expounding on them to the point where they just logically don't make any sense anymore. I guess pointing out the holes in logic in these movies. I mentioned a few, Inception, The Matrix. I'm sure this goes on and on throughout the series. Did I like it? Sure. I enjoyed Rick and Morty. I enjoyed the time I spent with it. I'm sure I'll watch a few more episodes. I'm not 100% sure why I hear people talking about it like it's the most brilliant high IQ show in the world. It's smart. It's funny. I laughed a few times. So, I don't know. There you go. Rick and Morty. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. Hit that subscription. Hit that little alert bell thing that lets you know when the new shit hits. And stay tuned for more. Thanks.